Hey y'all, welcome back. I'm Shayna Cersei and I'm so excited to paint with you today. So today we're going to do another page in our watercolor journals and I am going to be doing some crows. So you can see over here I have a bunch of crows sketched out and this is just sketchbook paper. And then I wanted to take one of these or two of these and actually paint them as well. So I decided to put a couple of them in my watercolor journal book, and I've already drawn them in outlines, but I'm just going to kind of go over some basic shapes, looking at a bunch of photographs of crows and then how I kind of came up with, or where I start from when starting to draw something like this. So everything that we see has a lot of basic shapes to it, and we'll go over the basic shapes. So birds are pretty simple creatures if you break them down into all their basic shapes and kind of put them together. So for this, first I looked at the head and where the head is, and the head is just basically a big oval. So you can see there, that's the head. And then I put another kind of big oval down for its body, and this is where I started from. And then once I had those two shapes kind of sitting down in the direction that they were in the picture, same thing for these other things. There's an oval here, and there's another big oval here, an oval this way, and another oval this way. And then I started to put on the details. So after I had those two shapes, I started to connect them and draw more of the actual outline. So instead of an oval here, this kind of swoops in, and then you can erase those other lines, the other, like these interior lines. So then I had the basic shape of the body. Then for the beak, again, I found the basic shape. So triangle here, and it's just kind of like a almond shape. You see that with the lines separating it down the middle. And then I went in and added shading and all of that. Same thing for the eye. I kind of just checked out where the eye is, how far away it was from the beak. Circle, circle within a circle, and then leaving a little spot for the highlight. All of these other things that are in here are just added on little bits of detail. So I added on some little detail here for the wing. This shape kind of fell in here. This was a big shadowy area versus this outside section. And then for the leg down here, again, just breaking it up into the little shapes. So rectangle here, long rectangle here. And then once you get in the basic shape, you can start to refine the edges. So I hope that's helpful. If you go start to look at pictures or images of birds or crows or anything else you want to draw, you can certainly just trace them or transfer them. And then start to paint them, or you can start practicing your drawing skills. But they are two very different skills, painting and drawing, so just keep that in mind and be kind and gentle to yourself. So let's paint some crows. All right, so I took like two sections. I didn't do this whole, you can see I just kind of cut it off right here. I'm doing that section, and this one down here, there's a lot more detail on the eye and the drawing or whatever. I'm going to paint that in, but I did that section down here. Crows, you know, a lot of people think they're black and they're dark. I think these are going to be a lot of fun to paint because we're not just going to use black. We're going to use blues and purples for shadows and highlights. Make this a lot of fun, but also crows are really awesome birds. They're super smart. So I'm just pulling out some Payne's Gray here, and I'll go over supplies and materials real quick. This is a Bauhong watercolor sketchbook. It's a 6x9 is one of the pages. It's 140-pound cold press paper, 100% cotton. My paints are Core QOR by Golden. That's my preferred watercolor paints. Whatever brand you have will be wonderful. And then for brushes today, I have a size 3 Princeton Aqua Elite and a size 10 Princeton Select brush. So let's get painting. I'm gonna start, I think, with this guy over here. And I have Payne's gray, I have blue, and I have this purple. So this is just Dioxazine purple with Ultramarine added to it to make it a little more blue. And then my navy over here is just Ultramarine and Payne's gray added together. So those are my colors. And I'm going to take a kneaded eraser and just lighten this up a little bit. So in this one, there's a lot of little detail in the eye, and it's just basically different shades of gray. But I think that's really important to make it really pop. So we're going to keep track of that. But first, let's put down, I'm going to start with a purple underneath. I'm going to keep my edges a little jagged here. I'm going to start with the purple wash. So this will be kind of the lightest possible color in any of the highlight areas. I think purple can be really pretty. A lot of folks, when they see a color, they assume like that's the only color. So a crow is black, so I must have to paint, or gray, dark gray, and I have to paint everything in that color. That is not true. You're going to see lots of different colors in the highlights and in the shadows. See, I've made it a little darker here. I'm just going to go right to the edge with this. Not really going to leave any white spots per se, maybe a few down here, but definitely some light, very light spots in here, and actually on the top of the head. And as I start to add darker and darker colors, it will build up a contrast. So I'm doing wet on wet right now, just on some areas over the eye, under the chin here. There's going to be a little section here where it's like you can see the neck feather. Let's pick up some navy. And then I'm going to let this all dry and work on another area. All right, we're going to let that dry. I'm going to pick up my Payne's gray. And I am going to do this. I'm going to do a very light wash because the top of this beak is going to be very much in highlight. Probably could have erased this pencil even a little more. It's not going to be white, but it's definitely going to be a very light gray. And then there's going to be lots of darker areas around it. All right. And while that dries, I am going to take my Payne's gray. Actually, do I want it to be more of a blue? Let's start with a blue for the very lightest color in the eyeball. Now this rim around here, there's a thin rim that is going to stay white. and also a little speck up here at the top. So a little speck up here at the top is going to stay white. But this is going to be the highlight color, this blue I just put in here. We're going to go much darker. But we're just going to get that in there first. And I am going to put again, we're still wet on wet, so things are going to bleed out. We're not going to keep like the shape of feathers or anything. I'm just starting to darken some of those areas around the eye, giving it a little bit more shape. I'm going to come under the beak here. Again, feathers are glossy, beaks are glossy. They're going to bounce a lot of light. There's going to be highlights. And there's going to be dark, dark shadows. Our purple crow right now. I promise he will look not purple when we're done. Definitely purple in the highlights, but overall, we're going to go back over a lot of this with Payne's Gray. All right. Just waiting for some stuff to dry. I am going to come in here with my Payne's Gray and my tiny number 3 brush. I'm gonna go darker on this top part. It's like this little chunk of like feathers and a little something extra on top of the beak. I don't really know what it's called. But it's not quite the shininess of the beak. The beak has its own sheen to it. And we're going to go darker underneath. All right, we're going to let that dry. I think we can come back to the eye. All right, so we're going to do another pass. I'm going to do Payne's Gray, but watered down, and that is going to be the bottom of the eye here. And kind of up through this top area. Leaving the top with this light, light blue color. Okay, so that's step 2. We're going to have to let that dry again, and we're going to go even darker with the outline and then the little tiny pupil in the middle. Just pulling a little bit of color out of there. There we go. Lovely. All right, I'm going to bring in, sorry for my arm getting in the way. quite fully dry, but I'm bringing in Payne's gray. This little domey part of his head, I think we're going to leave in the most highlight. And then start to bring in and there's a wing right here. Introduce some feather kind of texture. And I'm going to bring in some of this blue into the darker areas. Just switch to a smaller brush. And I'm just bringing up some of this feather texture. I'm not really introducing any more new color. I'm just kind of moving around what is already on. Here. Pull some of this color out. So with each new layer of detail I put on, I'm kind of going a little darker or a lot darker in some instances. We're going to go a lot darker around the eye. And now I'm going to go into those details of the eye. And then I think I'm going to be done with this guy. You could keep going, but all right, we're going to do the pupil right in the center for sure. And then even this section up above kind of goes up around the highlights like that. Got a little extra. I'm just going to pull out. And then I'm going to go very, very detailed or very slowly around that inner eye, really making that glossiness pop. and also around the outer kind of edge here. Adding just little feather texture there. Go up here. Really love this blue in here. I think it looks great. Just gonna do a little more dark contrasty right around that edge. And then I'm not going to worry too much about the feather, like the shape of the feathers. A bunch of the reference photos you could see like the actual feather shapes in here. I'm just going to leave it. There we go. That's crow number 1. How lovely. They really are beautiful. Blending that out a little bit. Okay, well, let's leave it. And I'm going to paint number 2. Wonder what would happen if we do just all Payne's gray. In number 2. Let's give that a try. All right, so for this one, we're gonna go start light, same as we did before. I don't think this will be as interesting if it's all Payne's gray. Feathers are all moving this way, so I'm moving my paintbrush that way. Go around the eye again. The eye we're going to treat pretty much the same as we did over here. And I'm going to introduce some darker colors. I'm going to leave the shiny part of the crow's head, or the top of the head, and highlight. I'm going to go much darker here. And around the top of the eye. Dark around the beak and under. My smaller brush, I'm just going to blend this out a little bit. And then we're going to let this dry. This eye is almost a little too big for me over here now that I'm looking at it. I'm going to go a little darker. There's not much I can do about it now in terms of making it smaller, but I am going to go darker around here, and I'm going to bring this edge under. So I just got rid of, there was white that went all the way up here and it just made it look a little too big. There we go. That looks better. All right, so while that continues to dry, while the rest of this dries, I'm gonna start to add some darker layers. Again, I'm pretty much sticking just with Payne's gray here. Same thing with the eye. I'm gonna do a light wash over everything except this tiny little white area and the rim around the outside with the white. I go dark, dark, dark up here. Nice medium value on the bottom side, and we're going to leave just a little shininess or white at the very top. I do wish I lightened up my pencil a little bit. But I'm not going to worry about it too much. So still looks like a crow, but I feel like this one looks so much more interesting with the different colors. I mean, I can still play with the values here quite a bit. Before this is considered kind of a fully done piece, but I do love this with lots of different colors. This would just be monochromatic. There can be such loveliness in a monochromatic painting as well. Got more feathers coming this way. And like you see, with each layer I put on, that value, the contrast gets built up. There becomes, instead of just a light and a dark, there's a light, a medium, and a dark. And then there's multiple mediums in between. And that's what kind of builds interest, especially if you're doing a monochromatic, where the only thing you have is the value, the lightness and darkness of the color, but you only have one color to work with. I think I have to go a lot darker, like right here. the eye is dry, go back in into a tiny section, add in even a darker color, but leaving that first gray we put down still exposed in another section. So now we have a light, a highlight, a medium of the reflection, a medium gray of the reflection, and then a very dark shadow, all within the one eye. That's what gives it that glossy look. I'm just adding in darker details, and I'm not using a reference photo. I should be. This is kind of from memory. Oh, it's super windy outside. So just little details of where I remember it being like lighter and darker, and like, ooh, we could see a little bit more detail of a feather here or there. Or like where layers overlapped each other. I'm going to bring this section down to more of a medium. Gray, a little bit of a highlight. And I think we'll just add a few more darker details down here, just to show a little feather separation. It's a little too stringy for me. Let's smooth it out a little bit. I do want to go darker in some of these areas. There, that's better. Gives it more of a roundness. It's getting chunky. Okay, I think I'm going to leave it. So there are my two crows. This one's looking kind of up and over his shoulder this way. This one's looking down. This one has a much smaller eye than this one. So I think I tried to preserve the detail of this eye too much, and I do feel like it's a little too big. But that's okay. I feel like it should be a little smaller like this one. Or maybe this one's a little too small. Either way, I think they both look fine. And I enjoyed painting both of them. So while I finish up putting on some final little details, the beak. Thank you so much for following along with my crows in my watercolor journal. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so, especially if you're new here. Go ahead and share with a friend if you have someone else you love to paint with or who might also enjoy learning some ideas for watercolor painting or following along. And feel free to leave a comment. Check out the description for links to supplies and materials. And thank you so much for following along. And we will do another watercolor journal page very soon. Take care, y'all. Happy painting.